The conference was looking at the question of whether the institutional setup that we have right now is up to the task of handling the need for sovereign debt restructuring that might occur in the future. Episodes like the one that we're seeing in Greece right now. And the IMF is playing a really central role in that whole process now. It has always played a very central role in the process. So it's reasonable to ask, is the IMF as an institution capable of handling it? Has it done a good job in the past? I think the answer to that question, or let's at least say the beginning premise of the discussion, is that there have been some very messy sovereign debt restructurings or defaults that have been costly, not only for the country that has to default, but also for countries in the region and for the global economy. And the question is, could we do better? Not necessarily that the IMF has done a bad job, but could the IMF be equipped with more tools that would make those processes happen sooner? Because one of the real conclusions of this conference was that when sovereign countries need to default or need to restructure their debt, the sooner they can start that process, usually the better. So the question is, does the IMF have the appropriate tools to ensure that any restructuring that needs to occurs in a timely fashion, and that it is done in as fair and as low cost a fashion as possible?
I think that a lot of what I hear in the other sessions is that these issues of restructuring debt are often ways to avoid the inevitable, which is countries that are fiscally insolvent should just be shut down. They should default. And I've been very, I haven't worked in this area for a while, but I did a number of papers on the IMF about 10 years ago. And I thought the IMF at that time, its conditionality didn't work, and its bailouts tended to encourage moral hazard. So I'm a little skeptical of how seeing the IMF as a solution to the world's problems. I think that the market mechanisms and market discipline are the solutions to the problems of sovereign defaults, and that what the world should be, what world governance should be worrying about is not bailing out or protecting these countries, but just trying to minimize the spillover effects to other countries.
I think those are very relevant issues in a world that is very interconnected and will continue to be, where financial flows are very relevant and move very fast. So to come up with some architecture that one, prevents future crises, and two, also helps to the resolution of them in a way that perhaps has too much uncertainty. I think it helps because it's some sort of public good that reduces those uncertainties, creates eventually some consensus about some rules on how things would be connected and addressed and resolved.
Look, obviously it's a very important set of questions. This is very timely. We're seeing issues which in some sense have always been with us, in the sense that there have always been sovereign debt crises, come up in new and very challenging contexts, and that's been discussed here. Obviously what's going on in Europe is kind of a new and challenging set of issues. What's sort of been a bit in the backdrop, but I think has to be on the table, is all the industrial countries are at one level or another facing these challenges. And while they're not facing crises at this point, thinking about those issues is sort of central. So I think this conference has been interesting in terms of presenting new ways of thinking about what are in some ways old and recurring problems, but in a very new context.
Okay.